Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a sassy mini tutorial. And what are we talking about? Well, we're going to talk about templates. Probably one of the hardest topic to have a conversation about, but I'm going to give it a try. So I want you to grab your paper, grab your coffee, and let's get right into what we're talking about. So this is the time of year where you guys get bombarded, and I mean bombarded with new template shapes, and you have to figure out how in the world am I going to conquer them, right? So you end up with typically a PSD file for Photoshop, and you end up with a PNG, which has what is labeled a bleed and a safe. And you're thinking, what am I supposed to do with these? How am I supposed to make a design? Nikki, I'm not you. I'm not a designer. I can't think outside the box when it comes to design. But I also realize, and let's just call it what it is, you guys want to attempt to make your own stuff sometimes. Maybe the harder shapes you'll leave up to me, but for the most part, you want to be able to make something of your very own, right? We want that sense of pride. But when you look at a template, sometimes it can be completely overwhelming. And when I talk about a bleed space and I talk about a safe space, you kind of get just overwhelmed by the entire process. Now, please note, I am going to be using this in Photoshop, but this particular conversation will resonate no matter what design program you use, because we're pretty much just going to talk about bleed and safe. I'm not going to give you all the fun little toys that you can play with in Photoshop, because you know what, that's just Photoshop. But I am going to show you some tips and tricks you may want to think about when it comes to shades and gradients and placement of your design. Let's just jump to it. And good morning, everyone. You like my hat? I like my hat too. It's Nomi. Yes, you'll hear more about this hat tomorrow. All right, let's get that. Sorry, sidetracked. So this happens to be from RREM Distributors Shoe Charms. This is the football jersey shape. And you're looking at it. Okay, so Nikki, what is this, right? What you have here is your safe space, okay? That is the layer that's on the top. Your bottom layer is your bleed space. Now, if you notice, there's a bleed on the outside. Why is there bleed? Well, because when you're pressing something at 2 a.m., you want to be able to lay it down, press, and go. Now, this safe space is pretty much the cut line. That is exactly what the shape looks like. So there's a lot more corners to it. There might be a little bit more intricate stuff like cutouts in there. That's what the safe space is for. Now, I typically, when I'm designing these templates for my vendors, I will make the safe space one color and the bleed another. There's a reason for it. One, so that you don't get confused. Now, over in my layers panel, I do make sure that I typically label it safe and bleed for when I am working on the design. Now, whoops, I spelled that wrong. Give me 1 second. Dyslexic moment. So what I like to tend to do is I will bring down the opacity on my safe space down to about 50% or so. And then I turn it off, or I move it out of the way. For this particular one, I'm going to turn it off because I'm in Photoshop. Now, I want to work with the back of this jersey. I could do this a couple different ways. Again, remember, this isn't exactly a Photoshop tutorial. This is just an everyday tutorial. So I am going to show you how we're going to build a design on top of this. I'm going to use the navy, but I want you to see where my thought process is. So you look and you see there's a collar, right? When I'm designing, and I'm just going to literally just draw with one of my brushes here, just as, again, a general line for you guys to see. Give me 1 second. That's pretty big. Okay. So we have here our jersey. I want to add a collar to it. Now, I don't know what kind of collar I want to add. Do I want it rounded? Do I want a V-neck? Because this collar is straight in the back, I do want to add some dimension. So I'm going to come in here, and I might want to come up and down. Now, remember, don't judge this. This is just for the part of the tutorial to show you about different things. Okay. So we're going to come in again. I'm just going to, there we go. Oh, my smooth is on. That's why it's taking forever. Okay. So maybe I want that as the collar. Maybe I want to add in some striping in here. I want to add striping in here, right? Whatever it may be, as archaic as this looks. Now I'm going to basically power clip it. If you're in Corel, it's power clipping. It's clipping mask if you're in Photoshop. Basically, you're going to put whatever you just made within the shape, okay? So there we go. Very crazy, generic looking jersey. But I want to make sure that it's going to line up correctly. See, there's my bleed space. So, yep, okay, so I might want to move that. Oh, you know what? That's a little wonky. I might want to move that. Let me show you another example, okay? Maybe I'm looking at this and I want to add in a different, and this is where this is going to be important, okay? Maybe I want to highlight, let me get on the right layer. I want to add in some lines in here, okay? I want to add some striping into this mess right in here, okay? And I'm going to show you what happens. Look, you can see some of the blue. I didn't add enough of the image to have it work. Now, one of the things I do like to do is I will take actually my bleed space and put it underneath, or my safe space and put it underneath my bleed space, and I'll bring it up to 100%. Now, if you're using a power clip or a clipping mask, I will take that bleed space and basically shove it, so to speak, within the image, okay? Let me just put on my background so you can see this a little bit better with a different color. Because I did use white. Because why not? Whoops, wrong one. Wrong background. There we go. You see how my white that I drew in there, because I wanted some design side panels, you don't see it. Why? Because I didn't do it in the right spot. So what I'm going to want to do is go back and redesign it. Now, why did I push my bleed within this cut space? Because I wanted to know where it was going to hit. So if I bring that space back up, see that? So now let's keep going. We're going to, let me get back into pulling that back out because I drew right directly on my layer. So I have my bleed, see? Right there. Now, I'm not going to draw on that layer, but I want to know exactly where that layer is, what it's doing, and so that I can make sure that whatever I am working on is going to fit within the bleed space. So I'm just going to use this as my example. I'm going to change the color to teal just to make it a little bit easier to see. As you can see, I am going to typically want to put it like right here, right? I want that side panel on the jersey. But it needs to be able to hit within the safe space. So I want to make sure that whatever I'm drawing, whoops, switch here, is going to hit, and it's going to look ridiculous on my bleed space. Okay. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because this right here has to hit within the safe. So if you're doing shadows or gradients, which I will show you that as well, you want it to hit within your safe space. The bleed is there just so you don't make any errors in lining things up. So you want to make sure that you over dramatize, or I don't even know if that's the right word, but you want to over accentuate where you put things. Let's talk about like shading and gradient on this. So I'm going to go back down to my bleed space. We're going to take off my safe. I'm going to add in an inner shadow. Okay. And the reason I'm adding in an inner shadow, because this is going to make about 1,000 times one more sense. Now, as you can see, I can tell you right now, it's not going to hit. I'm going to hit OK, because once I turn my safe back on, look, I don't have any of that gradient going onto my safe space. So it's going to be pointless. And I'll even go one step further to show you that it won't work. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to shove that into there. Whoops, it's still on 42%. Give me a second. Okay. Look. There's really no shading. It's very minimal. And if I were to shift this to the right or the left and up, down, I'm going to end up with, watch. If I shift when I'm pressing, I can end up with this. Well, that's not what I want either, right? You want to make sure that when you're adding in shades and gradients to a bleed space, you add enough of the shades and the gradients. I know you're thinking, Nikki, this is why we pay you to do all the heavy. Okay. So we're going to take that out. And whoops, let me go back to where it was centered. So now I want to add more shades or gradients. Okay. So for this, it's an inner shadow. I'm going to bring it in and I'm really going to make sure that it's going to hit. This looks absolutely ridiculous. I realize that. But if you've ever seen any of my shapes, you will see if you look at it, it doesn't always look the part. All right. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go power clip it back into my shape because I want to make sure. There you go. Once I put it in there, now I know that this is going to have my inner shadow hitting on my safe space, which means you're going to see it. It looked really wonky on the bleed space, but once you get it all dialed in, now you see where those shades and gradients come in. All right? That's why it's important to know bleeds and safes. I'm going to come back out here again. We're going to go hit the comments real quick. I'm going to move things out of the way. I'm going to show you something that I did design, which happens to be this guy on my hat, and show you how it's important to know where your bleeds and your safes are and things that absolutely drive me crazy. Good morning. Good morning. So far, are we good? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Hopefully. So when you are talking about bleeds and safes real quick, okay, those bleeds and safes are this. You want to make sure things are hitting, wording is fitting within that safe space. That's why we give it to you, because you are going to put maybe a jersey, a name on the back of that jersey, right? Well, you want it to fit. You don't want it to cut off your letters. You don't want it to have a hole be in the way and now it's cut off part of the word. You really want to make sure that you utilize your safe and your bleed. And a lot of people get confused by that. What are they for? Remember, safe is your cut line. It is the exact cut line. Line it up on top of your bleed. Go ahead about your design work and then keep going. I'm going to go switch the screen and we're going to get to my gnome. Give me 1 second here to go grab him. Sorry, I got a song in my head. It's, it's what you get for Monday morning or Saturday morning. So meet my Nomi. This is my Nomi. He is exclusive to me. So you won't be getting the templates for this, but I wanted to show you some things that you have to think about when you're making this particular thing. Let's get to it. All right. I currently do not have it sitting within the safe space, but you see where his feet are right here. And I'm going to see if I can't highlight. Give me 1 second. I want to grab the right one. Okay. So on his feet, right, you have this right here, this guy right here. It's in the corner, which means it's going to cut the foot off weird and it's going to look really, really wonky. How do I know if this is working? I have his pom-pom up here. I have the feet weird. It's not sitting correct remotely at all within the bleed space. I won't know if it's going to be an exact fit until I shove it into the safe space. Now, again, you can just lay it over the top because, again, a lot of you don't have Photoshop and you work in either Silhouette or Cricut, wherever it may be. All right. So now I have my safe space over the top. I am going to go in and I'm going to do it at the 50% because I want to see how this right here is going to sit. Do you see how the shoe is coming down? I know for a fact that shoe is going to look really wonky once I go to clip it into that shape. I do a lot of clipping in and out of the shape just to make sure that it works. So I'm looking at where all of those curve points are. How is the design going to sit when that happens? I'm looking at the pom-pom. Is that going to sit the way I want it to sit? Is it doing the curves the way I want it to do? This is why you're provided the safe and the bleed. Now, if you're in Photoshop or in Corel, again, Corel is power clip, and then you've got Photoshop that's clipping mask. I'm not sure what else it is in any of the other design softwares. Okay, so now I want to take and shove it in here. So this is now the exact cut line of my gnome. And I can tell you, it's driving me nuts. So here's that piece right there that we were talking about right here. That shoe is not where I want it to be. So I want to either move it over and change the location so that it sits correctly. When I go to unclip it, you're going to see how ridiculous this looks. So I'm going to go in. I want it to sit a certain way because I want it to hit within those corner points. Now I see that my pom-pom, well, yep, he's slightly out of the way too. I want to maybe make him curve a little bit more. Whatever your design program allows you to do it. Okay. So now I have what I feel is the correct location for the items I have in my design. My shoes are sitting where I want them to sit. The pom-pom's sitting where I want it to sit. Like all of the things are sitting where I need them to sit so that it is going to print correctly. So how do you check to see what it looks like outside of that space? Now just hold up tight because I'm going to ungroup it. Give me a second. It looked really weird. This is what happens when you design in Photoshop. It's a bunch of things all piled in together. If you notice, I am missing, like it's not sitting right here. You're going to start to see different pieces behind it. I know for a fact that that's not even going to cut on there. Like you're not going to be able to see that. This is why I will go in and out of a safe space. This way I can see how it's going to cut, how it's going to lay down. So when I go to lay this gnome, this guy right here on my hat, when I go to lay him down, I know it's going to fit 100%. There's going to be no wiggle room. I made the bleed not huge. That's why you don't ever want to make a bleed huge on your items because that leaves too much room for error, meaning shifting right, left, up, down. You go in and you fix this. I always, again, bounce in and out of having my safe space. It's just your guide. That is your cut file. Don't design in your safe space. Always design in your bleed. Make sure your bleed has a little bit of an edge to it. I'll give you another example of some bleed spaces. Let me just do this real quick. Group that and shut that off. Hold on. Grab them all. It would help. You're grouping things, Nikki. Okay. So we're going to just take some... Turn this guy off. When you're designing 101 with Nikki. Sorry. So here's the Maltese cross. Again, if you can see on my Maltese cross, the bleed is not very big. I don't want it to be because it leaves too much room for error. It allows for too much shifting back and forth. And you know what? We don't have time to constantly be fixing our files. So you make sure that your cut, whatever your cut line is from your vendor. So I get the cut line. I will get the safe space. And then I will go in and make the bleed template for you guys to design in. Now, if there's a cutout in there, I will go in and see what the cutout looks like. Let me pull up one that has a cutout and how this is really important when it comes to all things design-wise. Give me 1 second. Let me go find Erin. She's got some new stuff that we need to be able to look at. Prime example right here. So you have this. This is why the safe and the bleed is going to be uber important because you don't want to be designing for this hoof and have it be way out here in this space. You want to make sure that your bleed space is not huge. Now, this is for a 10-inch wind spinner, right? So you're going to want to go in and make sure that your shades and your gradients on the cowboy hat are going to fit properly. If you're going to go in and draw the face, you don't want the nose way out here. You got to actually make it here and then add it. This is one of the craziest ones to design for, and it takes a lot of time. This is why you need to support your local designers because we go in and we think about all of the ways the shades and the gradients and the placement are so that you, the person that's going to purchase those designs from us, can do this flawlessly and make sure that it lays out correctly, that all you have to do is press and go. We try to take the guesswork out of it. Let me tell you, this one would take me probably at least 2.5, 3 hours to sit and design because I will meticulously go through and make sure everything is sitting properly. I know it's hard, but you do get these things. Now, could you just go in and make this a silhouette? Of course you can. A lot of people would probably do that. Go in and make a silhouette. You still want that bleed space to be the silhouette piece. And then they might put a design around the outside. This is why bleeds and safes are completely important. Let me go head over to the comments. How are we doing so far? Does this make a little bit of sense? And do you have any questions? One of the things about bleed and safe design is just making sure it is on perfect. I mean, when you are laying down that image, so when I was laying out my Nomi here, this is a patch that is from the Embroidery Nerds. When you are laying out this image right here, you don't want room for error. Why? Because it's white underneath. You don't want it shifting. This is why that bleed space is absolutely important. You don't want it to shift. You don't want to see a mistake because you had tired eyes at 2 a.m. and you're sitting there pressing and all of a sudden, bam. So it will start out just like every one of our substrates, right? It starts out like this. You want to make sure there's enough going around the edge so that those tired eyes can do the work. When you have designs like that cowboy one, you want to make sure that the shades and the gradients and even the tie around his neck, right? The bandana sits correctly and it looks like it. You don't want it to look like a blob either, because when it goes to lay down on that wind spinner, you're going to lay that down and all of a sudden it might not look correct. So we're going to go bounce back over there and I want to show you that. We're going to zoom in a little bit. So one of the things is I will sit here and design sometimes underneath the safe space. I will leave it on top of here just so that I could see it. I will change things as I go, but for right now, again, this isn't necessarily a design tutorial. This is just to show you what I'm talking about. So I know his hand is here, so I would have to create a hand. Never making life easy. But if you notice, I want to come in and hit, making sure that this all right here, whoops, let me put my layer on. My apologies. I'm going to go in here and clear this right out. And I'm not clearing it out. I'm making the hat. But I can tell you that hat goes up into here. Okay. So when I go to clip that in, see, it's going to clip weird. Thank God for my bleed space. You see that bleed space? So I want to make sure that it's going to hit correctly. All right. And these are the things that you want to think about. So believe it or not, when you look at this, and here's the kicker, it doesn't touch. Okay. So that's what I was just looking at. I was like, oh, you know what? It actually doesn't touch. So don't worry about this part because you're not ever going to see it. Look and see how your safe space is designed out. So this is freestanding. So when you're making that design for that, you want to make it freestanding. All right. You want to make it white, whatever it may be. Let's get back to that. And I'm going to want to come in and just give it a little bit of a bleed around here. I don't need to go up at the top because the hat doesn't touch there, but sometimes those images do. So I'm going to come in, fill this in, and I'll show you what it looks like. So right now it looks like a crazy wonky hat, right? You would have to go in, add shades and gradients and all the fun stuff to make it look like a hat. His hoof right here, right? You want to go in and you want to make sure that this is going to fit correctly. Now, if I turn the back on, I'm going to want to over accentuate. Whoops, hold on. There we go. I'm going to want to over accentuate what I do as a design, because if this shifts in any way, shape, or form, I want to make sure that it's going to fit where this is. And see how this is right here? Again, not an easy shape. While it fits there, right? So now I've got it in here. We're going to take this out for a second. Again, I lay in underneath because I want to see what it's going to look like. This is an absolute blob right now. I might want to fill it in further. I want to fill this all in, but in reality, I am not going to see it. I'm not going to see this at all, because when I go to shove this right into there, I'm not going to see all the crap. What I am going to want to see is what the space looks like. Okay, so there is that as well. If you're looking for some shading and gradient, there's ways of doing it. But again, It's having a little bit of a design eye to help you figure it out. There we go. Let me go check the comments real quick. No comments. Awesome. Good morning to everybody. Thanks, guys, for watching. I hope that, honestly, this gives you a little bit more of an understanding about bleed and safe and why it's important to use both. Now, when you go to print your design, please make sure you're printing the bleed area, not your safe area, because, again, it's going to line up 100% perfect with the safe space, leaving you no room for error. Make sure that when you're printing things that you print using the bleed, and make sure you mirror it depending on the substrate you're working on. Work in your bleed. Make sure that you're working with vendors that offer templates to you so that you can create your own, because there's nothing worse than have to go in, scan in your item, make your own template. It's always nice when your vendors offer those up so that you can design for yourself. And for those harder substrates, like that wind spinner, reach out to your local designer and try to see if we can come up with something to make it look well. I will tell you right now, that cowboy one, that's a tough one. I'm not sure I'd want to touch that one with a 10-foot pole, but I've already got some design ideas that would allow for me to not have to be very intricate in the design. So that means no face, nothing, any of that. But there you go. With this time of year, we're going to get hit with a lot of templates and a lot of cool things for the back half. And you know what? I want you guys to feel successful in everything that you do, or at least try to. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday. I will see you guys all tomorrow on the SAS, where I'm showing off the embroidery nerds. That's right. The newest vendors to the Sassy tribe, where we're going to be talking about this stuff right here. So tune in tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will see you guys all later. You know where, on the flip side.